What role will each Syracuse basketball transfer portal edition play next season?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, Syracuse basketball has made 3 transfer portal additions this offseason. We're going to go over each of their expected roles, what is definite about them, and what could possibly happen. We'll go Eddie Lampkin first, Jair Davis second, and then Jaquan Carlos third. And the reason why I came up with that order is because that was the order in which those 3 committed. Sound good? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's begin with Eddie Lampkin's projected role for next season. He was the first player that Syracuse brought in the transfer portal this offseason. And by the way, the Orange still have 3 open scholarships remaining, so these could possibly change. But for now, Eddie Lampkin, a 6'11" transfer center from Colorado. I am very confident that his definite role for next year is to be the starting center, playing between 25 and 30 minutes a game. I do not see his role changing, even if/when Syracuse basketball adds another center in the transfer portal. And the reasoning for that is because Eddie Lampkin is a solid starting big man. That's one. Number 2, when you look at the centers that are available left in the transfer portal, none of them are even as good as Naheem McLeod. So overall, you're looking at someone who is probably more of a project if and when Syracuse brings in another center in the portal. So I don't see the role of Eddie Lampkin changing all that much with another addition. Here's where it could change, though. Eddie Lampkin next season could be the primary facilitator for Syracuse in the starting lineup, contingent on what Syracuse does at the guard position. If Jaquan Carlos is the starting point guard for Syracuse, then Eddie Lampkin is just a great passing big man, but he is not going to be the primary facilitator. However, as Mike McAllister has pointed out, Syracuse is still in the market for a guard. If it's a starting combo guard, meaning this is someone who can probably start in the starting lineup, aka better than Jaquan Carlos, or Syracuse does something else at the guard position, which I will get into later with Carlos, then Eddie Lampkin could possibly be the main facilitator for Syracuse basketball in their starting lineup next season. This is someone who last year averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds per game with Colorado, which is pretty good. But he also had 2 assists per game and a 14% assist rate. What does that all mean? Here's what you need to know. Eddie Lampkin is one of the best passing big men in the ACC, if not the country. He's got a little bit of a handle to him. He can distribute from the post. He can also distribute on the wing and at the top of the key. He is one of the best passing big men in the conference. So if Eddie Lampkin is asked to be the primary facilitator next season, I can see him doing it, but it's going to depend on if Syracuse brings in a starting combo guard or does something else with their guard position next season that I don't foresee right now. Overall, when you're looking at Eddie Lampkin and his role next season, he is going to be expected, and fairly so, to provide stability at the center position. Okay? Playing 25 to 30 minutes a night. When they brought in Naheem McLeod last year, I thought it was unfair, the expectations that were given to him. And I get it. He's 7'4" and a fun personality, and he does have some good traits to him. He's an elite shot blocker in the ACC. He proved that last season. But he is just not quite a starting caliber big man, even though he did start every game he played in last season. And he wasn't even that at Florida State. So I thought it was unfair for him to all of a sudden blossom into someone who, you get the idea, blossom into someone who can be a starting caliber center. A little bit unfair. But with Eddie Lampkin, last year he averaged 10 points and 7 rebounds at Colorado, which is a Power 5 school. He was in the NCAA tournament, and he played pretty well in that NCAA tournament last season. So I expect him, his role for next year, to be the starting center. Not the greatest defensive player in the world, but that's okay because Naheem McLeod is behind him. And I could also see Eddie Lampkin being a little bit of a leader on the team because, look, given his age and experience, as I said, if they add a center, chances are it's going to be someone who's more of a project, probably a younger player, who one day could be a starting center for Syracuse basketball, but he won't be for next year, and he probably won't even play much. Perhaps Eddie Lampkin can give him a little bit of advice. Be a leader. Show him the ropes in college basketball, what it takes to play in the ACC, or just let alone play Division I. We don't know who they're going to bring in. At least play in the Power 5. He could possibly be that too. The definite role for Eddie Lampkin next season, if there's anything you're going to take away, the definite role for Eddie Lampkin is to play 25 to 30 minutes and be the starting center for Syracuse basketball over the course of the season. He could possibly be, so this is another takeaway here, he could possibly be the main facilitator in the starting lineup, but it's really dependent on a few factors really at the guard position. Is Jaquan Carlos the starter? Because if he is, then Eddie Lampkin, just a great passing big man. Who else starts? Do they bring in another starting combo guard? Lucas Taylor doesn't really count in my book in that regard, but you get the idea. Bring in a starting combo guard. Eddie Lampkin is your primary facilitator next season. So he could be that, and he could be a mentor for a younger center that Syracuse basketball could still bring in, but we don't know if they're going to bring in that. So the main takeaway is that he's the starting center for next season, playing 25 to 30 minutes a night. So that is Eddie Lampkin's role for next year. Now coming up, Syracuse basketball has made 2 other transfer portal additions, and we're going to go with Jair Davis, who is the next one, a transfer from Delaware, and his projected role for next season.